All right, everybody, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. In today's episode, we will be recapping our 3 Thanksgiving games, our 1 Black Friday game, as well as giving an injury report ahead of the Sunday and Monday night games. To kick it off, honestly, a surprise win, in my opinion, for the Packers in Detroit, in a game that the Packers honestly dominated a lot of. And, I mean, I'm surprised, but it's a divisional matchup. The Packers just have not been playing good, but again, a very good game for them.
I think the most surprising part was the first time these two teams matched up, the Lions just ran it down the Packers' throats. There's nothing they could do.
And they were not able to in this one.
No.
But the Packers, for people like me that lost Joe Burrow and had very thin quarterback options and had to pick up Jordan Love, are very happy. Jordan Love, 22 of 32, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 carries for 39 yards, 26.62 fantasy points. A very good day for Jordan Love. There was no Aaron Jones in this game, so we saw a lot of A.J. Dillon. He did come in questionable for this week, so he carried the ball 14 times for 43 yards, caught all 3 of his targets for 38 yards, 11.1 fantasy points. He only played 52% of the snaps, and no, we did not see James Robinson. We saw Patrick Taylor for the other 48% of snaps. He saw a lot less usage. He was mainly out there blocking. He only had 3 carries for 11 yards. Caught his only target for 4 yards, 2.5 fantasy points. Obviously not a guy we were thinking about starting, but he did play half the game for them.
Did you see that A.J. Dillon catch where it was the, I don't want to say the most unathletic hurdle, but I don't know how it worked. Because he jumped like 2 feet off the ground.
And it got him.
The hurdles, and they just couldn't tackle. I was like, what just happened? But
A.J. Dillon, I mean, he's another one.
He's just a bowling ball.
Yeah, I mean, if you had Aaron Jones or for whatever reason you were thin at running back due to injury, whatever the case, and you started A.J. Dillon, 11.1 doesn't burn you by any means. I mean, you have to be happy with that from him.
Yeah, and it was like we said, the efficiency on the ground wasn't what we were looking for as much as the replication of targets out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Got 4, caught him. So.
Yeah, and Christian Watson finally had a solid game. If he was on your bench this week and he had a good week, I don't even blame you. It's just
he was on a lot of benches.
You couldn't,
a lot.
Unless you're in a very deep league. The Christian Watson trust level is very low, but in this game, he saw 7 targets, caught 5 of them, 94 yards and a touchdown, 20.4 fantasy points. I mean,
like the first play of the game was like a 40-yard pass to him.
Yeah. He's capable. It's just we don't see this even on nearly a consistent basis. Something that's a lot more consistent this season has been Jayden Reed, and he had another solid game. He saw 8 targets, the highest on the team, caught 4 of them, 34 yards, a touchdown, rushed the ball twice for 16 yards, 15 fantasy points. He is a very good flex play at this point in the fantasy season. He is very involved. They find ways to use him, and he's just been consistent. Their most consistent receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Romeo Doubs, quiet week for him, which sucks because you see the Packers score 29 points. You think he's going to be a little more involved, but he was not. Only 4 targets, caught 3 of them, 37 yards, 6.7 fantasy points. I mean,
yeah, there will be better weeks.
Yeah, and
that's. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
It's the tough thing when you have the emergence of Jayden Reed. Christian Watson's getting back to form.
Mm-hmm.
When you got to think of like the 49ers. You have so many capable guys. Some guys are going to get left out on a given week.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how it goes.
And, you want to talk about emergence. Another rookie wide receiver in this game, Malik Heath. Hadn't heard his name all year. He plays
He had,
20%
I
of
think, one
snaps.
catch.
He had 4 in this game on 4 targets,
Yeah,
46 yards, 8.6. Played 20% of snaps. They have the youngest wide receiver room in the league. I just, it's unbelievable
they
how
do.
many rookies, second year, third year guys they have. It's just filled with them. But yeah, Malik Heath, a solid game.
I mean, at least in their case, they see the talent.
Yeah,
They have a good eye for talent at wide receiver, unlike like the Kansas City Chiefs.
yeah. No, they have a lot of young receivers that could develop into.
Even Dontavian Wicks is good.
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
he's like, it's just, oh my God, you're right. Like,
they
the
have
oldest receiver on that team might be.
the one that it's Christian Watson that at least gets
Yeah.
relevant playing time. It's Christian Watson, the oldest
Wow.
receiver.
Wow.
I mean, but and then with Luke Musgrave being out
And Josiah DeGuara.
and Josiah DeGuara, it was Tucker Kraft played 96% of snaps.
We did mention it. We're like, they're not gonna have Musgrave and DeGuara is gonna be out. It's like, you shouldn't need a tight end, but
Yeah, and I mean, if you did, it paid out because he did catch a touchdown. But outside of that, he was targeted twice, caught both of them 15 yards, but caught a touchdown. 9.5 fantasy points. If you got that crazy and started him, I applaud you because, I mean, that's a solid week from a tight end. Does not burn you.
no, not by any means. Yeah, I mean, like we said, hopefully you did not need a tight end, but if you did, that was good for you.
Yeah.
On to the Lions side of the ball, we've seen uncharacteristic struggles from this offense early in games lately.
Yeah.
They did it against the Ravens. They did it against the Bears. The Bears, they were able to come back and win that game. They couldn't do it against the Packers. There were a lot of questionable fourth down calls. Jared Goff was not able to hold on to the ball, fumbled 3 times.
Yeah.
And this is after what, he had 3 interceptions last week?
I believe so.
It has been a pretty awful pair of games for Jared Goff, especially this one being at home. But we did talk about how the Packers have a fairly decent secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Still, Goff was 29 for 44 for 332 yards and 2 touchdowns. Didn't throw a pick in this one. But the 3 fumbles, realistically, watching this game, the Packers pass rush absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And it was surprising because the Lions have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. This is what they're good at, and they got owned. Yeah, 3 attempts for 9 yards to go along with the yardage and 2 touchdowns. Like I said, lost those 3 fumbles, giving him 18.18 points. I was hoping for a little better out of Goff.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the fumbles didn't occur, the score would have reflected that. That's losing like 6 points off of fumbles, but it is what it is. Montgomery, now surprisingly, actually, I can't say it's too much of a surprise, given the fact that the Lions got down big and fast. It did not take long for them to get down multiple scores. And due to the relative skill sets of each running back, if you've been paying attention, especially to how they used Jahmyr Gibbs, seeing that he played 71% of snaps in this game to David Montgomery's 27% should not come as that much of a surprise, especially when in his 27% of snaps, David Montgomery got 15 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. He's still doing David Montgomery things. When they can run the ball, they will, and it will be with Montgomery. Now, when they fall behind and they need to pass, Jahmyr Gibbs is that guy. That's his role.
Yeah.
And he plays it fairly well. Now, David Montgomery also got a 2-point conversion, giving him 15.1 points in this one. You weren't exactly disappointed at all, but obviously, given what the Packers have given up on the ground and what they gave up to David Montgomery earlier this year, probably we're expecting a little bit more, but we can live with 15.1.
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs, on his 71% of snaps, had 11 attempts for 54 yards, which is still really good to see him only have 4 less carries than Montgomery. Like I said, a lot of that came when they're down. They're, trying to. Gibbs fits a lot better when they're moving quick. Montgomery is the hard nose between the tackles guy.
Yeah.
And they could do a lot more outside stuff with Gibbs. He had 8 targets in this one. Unfortunately, only brought in 4 for 19 yards. Still 11.3 points, but I was hoping for a little bit more out of the Lions' backfield in this one. It was a bit disappointing.
Yeah.
Somebody who was not disappointing by any means, Sam Laporta, right back to form.
Mm-hmm.
Caught 5 of 8 passes for 47 yards and a touchdown. Also added in a 2-point conversion, giving him 17.7 points. Obviously, great day for a tight end, but hell, pretty great day in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, at this point, his bye is gone. You are rolling with Sam Laporta every week without any form of a question. Same with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dude just gets it done.
Yeah.
Point blank, period.
Yeah.
9 catches on 11 targets, 95 yards, giving him 18.5 points. 18.5 without getting in the end zone, man.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's hopefully putting you in a position to win down the stretch because he's just doing great. And the Lions are going to need to keep their foot on the gas because as we saw in this one, nobody's going to roll over for you. Jameson Williams, a guy that we did talk about as someone who, if he's going to be the number 2 receiver in this offense, then he's a guy worth adding. And he had some flashes in this one, caught 2 of his 3 passes for 51 yards, 7.1 points, but Khalif Raymond. I mean, got 5 targets, caught them all for 90 yards. And had 1 rushing attempt for 6 yards, giving him 14.6 points.
He hardly played, too.
I don't.
It's just one of those things.
I don't know what to do with that. I mean,
I don't think we do anything.
29% of snaps, only played 24. I mean, Jameson Williams and Josh Reynolds are basically out there the same.
Yeah.
Josh Reynolds got 2 catches on 4 targets for 15 yards and a touchdown. So he got 9.5 points. Realistically, outside of Laporta, Gibbs, Montgomery, and obviously Amon-Ra, Jared Goff is a streamer, definitely matchup dependent, but he's a decent streamer. Not really looking at Khalif Raymond unless you're in like a best ball league or you're in really, really deep, like our dynasty league or something. It might be worth like a speculative ad, but nothing outside of that. The only other guy is Jameson Williams. I think he has the talent and ability to be a relevant wide receiver for fantasy purposes. And yeah, that's really all with this one. Fairly disappointing day for the Lions.
Yeah, and staying on the trend of disappointing days, the Commanders at the Cowboys, the Commanders got destroyed.
Woo!
Destroyed 45-10. When you only score 10 points, we know that it was not going to be the greatest fantasy day for Commanders players. Sam Howell, 28 of 44, 300 yards on the dot. Didn't throw a touchdown, threw an interception, carried it twice for 13 yards and a touchdown, which really saved his fantasy day if you did decide to roll Sam Howell. He got you 18.3, which is a solid fantasy week against the Cowboys, especially when you only score 10 points. But his rushing touchdown was the only touchdown the Commanders scored on the game. They managed to kick a field goal outside of that. So you can imagine Brian Robinson, I was a bit higher on if Antonio Gibson were not to play, but he did play, and they got down a lot, and then we saw what the Commanders do. Brian Robinson carried it 15 times for 53 yards, 2 catches for 11 yards on 3 targets, 8.4 fantasy points, only played 45% of snaps. Antonio Gibson played 46% of snaps. Carried it 6 times, 21 yards, 3 catches for 16 on 4 targets, 6.7. Honestly, not a good fantasy week for either of them. I hope you caught the Gibson designation that he was going to go in time to take Brian Robinson out of your lineup. But if you did not, I guess 8.4 is not the absolute worst, but that is not a good start for a Thursday day game. But the receivers were kind of backwards from what we've seen. Their number one target, Scary Terry, saw 11 targets, but only caught 4 of them for 50 yards, 9 fantasy points. And I'm not by any means saying is Scary Terry's overrated at all. But are we still saying if the Commanders had a capable quarterback?
Overvalued for fantasy purposes.
I think
he's a
so
great
too.
wide receiver, but I think his value is not as high as like the general fantasy public wants it to be.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can continue saying that it's still the quarterback, because Sam Howell, say what you want, he throws the ball. They throw the crap out of the ball. And he completes a lot. He had 300 yards in this game, and only 50 of them went to Terry.
I think it's just more or less Bieniemy's style of spreading the ball out more is what affects him fantasy-wise.
Yeah. And, it just goes up in fantasy points going down the list. Jahan Dotson, who has somewhat seemed like emerged as the wide receiver too, had 6 targets, caught 5 of them, 52 yards, 10.2 fantasy points. That's one, if you started him in your flex, that's not a bad start. 10.2, it's not great, but it's a solid week. And then Curtis Samuel.
He's still dead to me.
He is dead to you, but he is very much alive in the fantasy value again somehow. 12 targets.
Someone's going to pick him up next week, and he's going to get 3. No, I
was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the exact same thing. It's very possible.
It's a trap.
He plays the least out of the 3 receivers. He only played 55% of snaps, but he saw 12 targets, caught 9 of them for 100 yards, 19 fantasy points even. He's someone...
Have a day.
Yeah, have a day. He probably was not being started in many leagues, unless you're in like a 12-man or deeper formats that we've talked about. But Curtis Samuel, he is a guy, if he's available in your league, that is at least he's worth looking at for sure.
Yeah.
And then
the Commanders just throw the ball so much.
Oh yeah. And sadly, Logan Thomas was left out of this game. They only saw 4 targets, caught 2 of them for 15 yards, 3.5 fantasy points. All in all, for only scoring 10 points, they did have some decent fantasy production from guys, like a Sam Howell, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel. Scary Terry with 9. That's not good, but it's not, a complete burn. But that is it.
We've just seen too many weeks like that out of him.
I agree.
On to the Cowboys side of the ball, which, we said you could pretty much comfortably start your people. And, like we talk about, the Cowboys have a lot of guys who are involved in that offense. Unfortunately, sometimes, for example, Jake Ferguson did not get it done. No. Caught 1 of 3 targets for 35 yards, 4.5 points. And, Ferguson is kind of hard because the last couple weeks haven't necessarily been that great.
No, they haven't.
And it kind of looks like I'd like to think that we can begin to trust Brandon Cooks. The last 2 weeks, he's on the field 72%. Now this week, 80%.
Yeah.
Very clearly has established himself as the wide receiver too. Gallup's numbers have gone down consistently.
Yeah.
48%, 47, 35, 33 this past week. I feel very comfortable with, I mean, if you watch Brandon Cooks, his route running, he gets open. He's doing great. He's starting to get in a groove with Dak. That might have some effect on Jake Ferguson's fantasy relevant. I mean, I think he'll still be a good tight end, but it just is a little cause for concern when you have obviously CeeDee Lamb going to get close to 10 targets every game.
Yep.
And if, Brandon Cooks, if he actually gets 5 or 6 targets a game, you still have everybody else that Jalen Tolbert is not going to go away. Keontae Turpin is not going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Rico Dowdle is not going to go away. So it's Schoonmaker. Some of these guys are they're going to be there. But if you have someone else like Cooks consistently getting his 5 or 6 targets a game, that takes away from someone like Ferguson when you still have the rest of the roster getting targets.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just a little thing I wanted to touch on because Ferguson has been a tight end that we've been looking at as one of the ones who could probably end in the top 10. But this very well could change with Brandon Cooks actually solidifying himself.
Yeah.
Now, back to the top. I say it every week. Please start Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Please. 22 for 32, 331 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 rushing attempt for 10 yards, 32.24 points. I'm not a big fan of the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a huge fan of the way Dak Prescott is playing football right now.
Mm-hmm.
Dude is killing it, man. I mean, it's great. It's good to watch. It's fun to watch. Dak's going crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you cannot keep this guy out of your lineup.
No,
Even if he has a dud week, absolutely cannot keep him out of your lineup. There's just not much to say there.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard, finally, we are getting back on track. 13 attempts for 79 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 targets, and 6 catches. Finally, man.
Yeah.
We have made it back out of the depths. God, it feels good. 24 yards on those 6 catches for Tony, giving him 22.3 points. Now, if Rico Dowdle has to have his involvement. 3 attempts, 11 yards, got 1. I mean, I got to give it to him. That 15-yard touchdown, that was nice. He made a couple moves. He got in it. It was nice. I can't take that away from him. But it's like I say, they're going to leave these guys involved. So 9.6 points for Dowdle. Would have loved to see that all go to Tony. But yeah, Jake Ferguson, we talked about, got the 1 catch on 3 targets for 35, 4.5 points. Not the best day. CD didn't have his most explosive day, but still got it done.
Mm-hmm.
4 catches on 9 targets for 53 and a touchdown, giving him 15.3 points. But, like I said, Brandon Cooks he's establishing himself.
Mm-hmm.
Also got 4 catches, but on 5 targets for 72 yards and another touchdown. 17.2 points from Brandon Cooks. There is no question to me at this point who is the wide receiver 2 and who is the wide receiver 3. Michael Gallup only got 1 target that he caught for 13 yards. He was more acclimated to the system of the Dallas Cowboys, and Brandon Cooks is just a better wide receiver, showing the more that they get used to each other. I think down the line, Brandon Cooks is a great flex option. That might be as far as I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
Jalen Tolbert, like I said, had his involvement. 2 catches on 3 targets, 49 yards, 6.9 points. And the Cowboys defense, like we talked about, had another touchdown. Deron Bland got another pick 6.
History. I
don't know why they just keep throwing the ball to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and try to take away from him, but guys, Sam Howell has the most interceptions in the league. Let's slow our roll on the Deron Bland MVP talks, Deron Bland DPOI. Just calm it down. But we do love it for the Cowboys defense. And then stupid Brandon Aubrey Man would have had 10 points if he made his PAT, but he missed the PAT and makes a 53-yard field goal. That's some Jake Elliott shit. But yeah, like make the PAT. It's so easy. Just
You would think. You would think.
you would think if you could successfully make a 53-yard field goal that a PAT should just be a piece of cake, but
Of course not.
no.
And then another game that was not very close and kind of what we expected, the 49ers at the Seahawks. The Niners won fairly easily, 31-13.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy did not have a very good game, fantasy-wise. And he was someone that I thought to just mash the start button on, but he'd been very hot of recent and cooled off quite heavily this game. He was 21 of 30, 209 yards, a touchdown, and interception, 3 rushes for a single yard, 11.46 fantasy points.
Yeah.
I mean, that one definitely hurts you. And it's tough because they won 31-13 and we were hoping for more from Brock, but I still like starting Brock Purdy. I think depends if you have another quarterback on roster, but I still feel comfortable rolling him out strictly because all the weapons he has around him, it should more often than not be solid games for him.
It got to a point in this game where they were just running the ball with Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
So it was like nothing's even.
No.
This is just dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the best running back in the NFL had another best running back week. Christian McCaffrey, 19 carries, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches on 6 targets, 25 yards, 30.9 fantasy points. It is Christian McCaffrey. It's just the experience you get when you have him on your team. I feel bad if you had to play against him this week. Deebo Samuel?
Probably didn't go too well.
No. And Deebo had a very solid week as well. He was heavily involved, had 9 targets, caught 7 of them for 79 yards, 4 rushes, 15 yards, and a touchdown. They must have heard us when we talked about him not hitting any of his incentives due to his rushing. He got some rushes this game, 22.4 fantasy points. Very good week for Deebo. And, there's 3 of the touchdowns right there to McCaffrey and Deebo. We talk about, every week it's going to be really hard for all 4 of their main guys to eat. And the one that got left out was George Kittle. Only saw 5 targets, caught 3 of them, 19 yards, 4.9 fantasy points.
I needed one more.
Yeah.
I needed one more. And if you saw the last pass of the game that they threw, it was so Kittle runs I think like a shallow out, and then Ray McCloud runs one a bit deeper. They're both wide open. I'm excited. I think the ball's going to George Kittle. I'm like, let's go. I just want 100, and the ball soars over his head to Ray McCloud. Oh God, I've never been so mad.
But
that's how it goes.
It is sadly, it is how it goes. And then Brandon Ayuk, he got the touchdown and he was efficient on his catches, but he did only see 4 targets in this game, but still turned in a solid week. 2 catches, 50 yards, the other touchdown in the game, 13 fantasy points. Not a great week for Ayuk, but again, a very solid week. Not going to lose you the week, not going to win you it, but
13 is not going to kill you.
Yeah, no, solid week. And then 49ers defense also gave you 13 if you started them, which we had an idea of because Gino was hurt coming into this game.
We had a hurt.
And they still rolled him.
Gino was going to play the whole. Yeah,
they still rolled him over Drew Lock. It didn't even matter. They were like, screw it.
I think it had to do. I mean, we all saw when you step into a game, throw 6 passes, only have 3 total yards on those 6 passes. And a completion to the other team. I'd probably rather play a hurt Geno Smith too.
Yeah.
Now with that, like I said, we had a hurt Geno Smith, We did not have Ken Walker in this one. We were not coming into this game expecting much from the Seattle Seahawks. In fact, we said we're downgrading all of the Seahawks wide receivers, and if Geno doesn't play, we're
Don't start
downgrading
him.
them even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not start any Seahawk wide receiver in this one, and I don't regret it.
Yeah.
Geno was 18 for 27, 180 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 rushing attempts for 21 yards, giving him 8.3 points. Obviously, was not planning on starting Geno Smith with a hurt elbow against the 49ers. So if you did, please donate your brain to science after you move along, because that's we need to see what's going on there.
Yeah.
Zach Charbonnet, 14 attempts, 47 yards. Like we said, he was destined to get the volume with Ken Walker missing because DJ Dallas is just incapable. Charbonnet got 4 targets, caught all 4 for 11 yards, 9.8 points. Nothing too spectacular, but it was funny because I saw some, one of those dumbass dynasty pundits on Twitter talking about, oh, well, everybody was just excited for Zach Charbonnet because he's new, but Ken Walker is so much better. Da, 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 da. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying that Charbonnet is better than Ken Walker at all, but are you really going to judge the dude's first start against the San Francisco 49ers? Like,
With a
what are we
hobbled
doing
Geno.
here?
With a
What
hurt
are we
Geno.
doing here? Come on, man. This is the type of stuff. Like, do you guys really understand what you're talking about? They're obviously gonna load the box. What do you mean? Like, have some common sense, man. Like, I don't even like the Seahawks or Charbonnet like that. It's just such a lazy take.
Yeah.
Like, obviously. Yeah, no one did anything. Noah Fant, 2 catches, 2 targets, 25 yards, 4.5 points. Colby Parkinson, not going to mention. DK Metcalf, 3 catches on 9 targets for 32 yards, 6.2 points. Tyler Lockett, 3 catches on 5 targets for 30 yards, 6 points. JSN, 2 catches on 3 targets for 41 yards, 6.1. No one could muster over 6.2 points from the Seahawks wide receiver room, and I'm not surprised by it.
No.
We saw this coming. My guy Jake Bobo got a catch for 6 yards. Just have to shout him out.
Shout out Jake Bobo.
Shout out Jake Bobo. But yeah, that's all for that one.
Yeah.
And good.
We'll finish it off with our Black Friday game. The Dolphins at the Jets. This is another one where, I mean, come on, how is this not flexed out, man? It wasn't even Zach Wilson. It's okay. We'll get through it. The Dolphins won this one fairly easily, 34-13. Tua actually had a terrible fantasy week and football game in general, to be honest. 21 of 30, 243 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, 2 carries for a single yard, lost a fumble, and finished with 9.82 fantasy points. And you know what's crazy is you read those stats, 243 yards, a touchdown, 21 completions. You're thinking maybe his guys had okay weeks. No. The guys we were going to start this week, other than Tua, had fantastic weeks. Because outside of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Jeff Wilson, only one other guy caught a pass, and it was Durham Smythe. A single pass for 10 yards. Our main guys 8. Tyreek Hill, 12 targets, caught 9 of them, 102 yards, a touchdown, carried it once for 2 yards, 25.4. It's Tyreek Hill.
2 touchdowns. He, in his hands, just...
Yeah. But he gets let off the hook because they won 34-13. He still gave us 25.
Oh, yes. For all the people who were starting Tua, they got 3 points on that drive instead of 7. So that would have added just, I would have taken 13 points over 9.
Yeah, that's very true.
For the love of God.
The only other receiver to catch a pass was Jalen Waddle, who was targeted 8 times, caught all 8 for 114 yards, 19.4 fantasy points. Book it. Another good week. Raheem Mostert played 60% of snaps, Carried it 20 times for 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Got a target out the backfield, didn't catch it. 21.4 fantasy points. Very good week for him. We knew no Devon Achan, no Salvon Ahmed, Jeff Wilson season. 11 carries, 56 yards. 3 catches on 3 targets, 17 yards. 10.3 fantasy points. Only played 33% of snaps. Very efficient for 33% of snaps. But again, when Achan comes back, that will dip down pretty heavily again. And like you said, they got the 3 instead of the 7. Jason Sanders, 12 fantasy points, solid. Miami defense, which was an obvious start this week, 22 fantasy points, including a 98 or 99 yard interception return at half on a Hail Mary.
Yeah, and this gives us the perfect opportunity to segue into the New York Jets. Now, I'm going to take a minute to talk about real football, not fantasy, because I feel very bad for everybody playing defense on the New York Jets. Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley have been 2 of the top rated linebackers for the large part of this season. This game was not out of hand for a large part of the first half.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets defense was holding. The Jets defense was doing good. For some reason, and I like Robert Saleh. I do. I don't know if he's the one making these decisions, but in what way does starting Tim Boyle for the first time in his career, in what way? We are 12 weeks into the season. How does this help your team? How does this help anything? How does this help you keep your job? I don't understand it. You guys lost Aaron Rodgers week 1 and decide in week 12 after the trade deadline that Zach Wilson isn't the guy?
After
Void
last
of all
season,
common sense.
the season before, you just now decided?
There's no excuse.
Mm-hmm.
There is no excuse for what is going on in New York. This is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, just wow. I personally, the first play that I saw in this game was Tim Boyle from the 5-yard line, drop back into the end zone, nearly get destroyed, somehow avoid the sack, get the ball off to the ground, of course, somehow avoids the... I was like, okay, I'm not watching Jets football anymore. This is just painful, genuinely painful. So on to the fantasy. Tim Boyle, 27 for 38 for 179 yards, 1 touchdown to his own team, 2 interceptions, 1 that went for a, they called it the Fail Mary. It's worse than a kick 6.
Yeah.
It's just how pathetic the New York Jets are, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense couldn't have really done anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's bad. Like, Breece Hall ran the ball 7 times. And this was a close game. Like I said, it was close in the beginning. Why did Breece Hall run the ball 7 times?
Yeah.
When Tim Boyle is making his first start in the NFL. It doesn't make sense. So 7 attempts, 25 yards, caught 7 passes on 9 targets for 24 yards, a whopping 49 total yards, 11.9 points. Dalvin Cook, 1 rushing attempt for 2 yards, caught 2 passes on 3 targets for 19, 4.1 points. Tyler Conklin, I mean, a guy that we've liked, but I'm just not, 4 catches on 5 targets for 33 yards, 7.3 points. I'll just leave that to the next guy. I don't want anything to do with this Jets offense. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Even Garrett Wilson, I mean, if you have him, you have no choice but to start him every week just due to the fact that he's going to get hyper-targeted. 7 catches on 10 targets for 44 yards, a touchdown, 17.4 points. But it's hard to have anything remotely close to hope when this offense looks like I used to make the joke about how like, oh, I think like this college team could beat the Jets. Obviously, I think the Jets defense is too good, but if you put Tim Boyle out there,
Yeah.
I could pick a few college defenses that could stop that offense
Yeah.
because just what are we moving on? I that was disgusting football.
Yeah.
Truly disgusting football. That Amazon, I don't care that y'all paid $1 billion for that. I don't never want to see the Jets on primetime again.
Yeah. And
Tried to ruin my Friday at noon.
yeah. And to close it out, we're going to include the injury report for our Sunday and Monday night game in this episode. And to kick it off, the Saints at the Falcons. Kendre Miller will be out with an ankle injury for the Saints, as well as Marshawn Lattimore with an ankle injury as well.
Ooh.
That's worth noting because that does help Drake London, I would assume. On the Falcons side of the ball, Mac Hollins will be missing. Also helps Drake London, as that's either their number 2 or number 3 target through the air, at least in the wide receiver room. The Steelers at the Bengals. The Steelers, Minka Fitzpatrick will be missing. Honestly, that's
again
doesn't really.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Bengals, obviously, Joe Burrow's out for the season.
Matter.
T. Higgins out with that hamstring injury. So Jamar Chase, we trust.
Mixon.
Yeah, and Mixon.
This should be a big Mixon game.
Yeah, the Jaguars and the Texans actually have a couple decently solid names. Zay Jones is questionable with that knee. We did see him play last week. Assuming, barring setback, we will see him out there again. For the Texans, Noah Brown will miss again with the knee injury, and Dameon Pierce is still questionable with the ankle injury. We'll have to see how that one plays out. The Bucks at the Colts. The Bucks, Rachaad White, after practicing in full for the entire week, was added to the questionable list with a knee injury. That's something to heavily monitor because I don't understand what could have happened after all the practices, but
like, did you pull a Monte Ellis? What is going on, man?
Yeah, we're just gonna have to
we
see.
Can't win.
Yeah. The Patriots at the Giants. We're not interested in very many people on either of these teams, but for the Patriots, Devonta Parker is still questionable with that concussion. This is like the 4th week, and that proves our point of how guys like Brock Purdy clear it in 4 days, and it's been 4 weeks for Devonta Parker, and he is
Purdy,
still
Alexander Madison, a running back.
Yeah. So
okay.
And on the Giants side of the ball, Darius Slayton is doubtful with a neck injury. The Panthers.
That's not good.
Yeah. Panthers at the Titans. Hayden Hurst will miss for the Panthers with a concussion. And that's it on their side of the ball. For the Titans, Treylon Burks will also miss with a concussion. So D-Hop should be heavily targeted. The Rams.
And see, that Treylon concussion makes sense. Like, that was
bad.
Bad.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Yeah. The Rams at the Cardinals. The Rams only have Ben Skoranek, questionable with a hip injury. I know Cooper Kupp.
That's been weird because for example, on Sleeper, Michigan wins. On Sleeper, because I was looking, because I have in Dynasty, I have Puka, and I'm playing against Cooper Kupp, so it's like obviously I do not want Cooper to play. But so reading through it, they said, let's see. Sean McVay said earlier Friday that Kupp was on track to suit up this weekend, but it wasn't known until after the Rams concluded their final practice of the week whether or not the wideout would carry a designation. Eventually, Kupp assuaged any concerns about the health of his right ankle during the practice session, and he should head into the Week 12 game without any restrictions. Okay, so
it does seem like he's going to go.
Sounds like Cooper Kupp is good.
Okay.
Which it's been just the talk around it all week was like that, oh, he's not going to play.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere,
he is going to play.
This injury stuff has been weird this year.
Yeah. On the Cardinals side of the ball, they are decently banged up. Michael Wilson will miss again with that shoulder injury. Yeah. Hollywood Brown is questionable with a heel injury. Zach Pascal with a hamstring. Emery DeMercado with a toe.
Oh my God, is it Rondale Moore week or what?
Is it Greg Dortch week? We'll
Oh,
have to
the
wait for the
Dorch
preview.
torch.
We'll leave it for the
Oh
preview. Leave it for the
no.
preview. The Browns at the Broncos. Denzel Ward is out with a shoulder injury. That is huge for Cortland Sutton owners. And then the Broncos have no one notable missing. The Chiefs at the Raiders. Kadarius Toney will miss. Mecole Hardman went on the IR. Yeah. Mecole Hardman went on the
Just
IR.
acquired him at the trade deadline. Like, oh, he'll help us. No,
from the
he
IR.
actually won't be playing football.
Yeah. And Jerick McKinnon will also be out with a groin injury. The Raiders, no notable fantasy guys. Like Max Crosby's doubtful. I mean, you're starting Mahomes and like Pacheco either way, you know, like it's not. Yeah. The
very big for the Raiders.
The Bills at the Eagles. No one really notable. I mean, Dallas Goedert's obviously out. We all knew that one.
Yeah.
The Ravens at the Chargers. Obviously, Mark Andrews will be out for the rest of the fantasy season at the very least.
Yes.
Odell Beckham is questionable with a shoulder injury. Zay Flowers with a hip injury. Marlon Humphrey with a calf.
Yeah, and I did see because I mean, obviously, I look at the Ravens practice report. They all logged full practices, so
they should be good to go.
Fairly confident with them. Yes.
Okay. And then the Chargers, Gerald Everett is questionable with a chest injury, and Jalen Guyton with a groin. And lastly, the Monday night will obviously get updates later than the rest of the games. But we do have a couple, like Deontay Foreman is doubtful with an ankle and shin injury. And then Justin Jefferson questionable with the hamstring.
Good Lord, man.
The worst part is if they don't declare him out until, say, Monday morning or whatever, most of the guys have played. Now you just have Bears and Vikings.
Yeah,
so
I'm gonna keep it. So you're honestly at that point, you're pivoting to Brandon Powell.
Yeah. So if you can't afford to do that,
I'd go out on a limb and count on him not to play, especially given his rhetoric around this.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically said, like, I don't give a damn about your guys' fantasy team, which it's
your
health, it's your money.
He shouldn't.
He shouldn't. And I understand that. But I, as well as many other people, have the idea that we're going to be seeing him week 14 after their week 13 bye.
That makes sense.
Especially given the recent success they've had, I don't see them going out and risking that. They're playing the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So that's going to do it for this one. We will be back with our next episode previewing all of the Sunday games as well as the Monday game. And yeah, as always, any questions, comments, advice you may need, feel free to drop it in the comments. And did you have anything else? I think I'm good to go.
No, yeah, that'll be it. We will see you guys for the previews.
Yes, sir.